Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Reenie Robertson. Delighted to see you again, Reenie. We had a great chat last time, and I know that we're up for some good stuff now. So, hi.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Cool. So, Reenie, like so many of our guests, has written a book. And it's a short book. She was just telling me that you're working on your full memoir, but you reckon that's going to take you a good couple of years from now, yeah?
Yes, it's been a lot more difficult to work through everything than I anticipated and get the details in there. So it might be a while.
Might be yeah. Well, as long as it takes, right? As long as it takes.
Exactly.
We've got to do. Like, I've started a full book maybe 3 times. I've got to 10 or 12,000 words. And then I thought, I'm not happy with the structure, or I don't think, who am I writing this for? So I've then sort of shelved it, and sooner or later, maybe I would do it. But the kind of the short memoir, would you call it a short memoir? What would you call it, Reenie?
Yes, it's in the very beginning. I kind of explained that it's just a glimpse and a glance into my experience and my story of growing up, being adopted, of finding biological family, of a lot of the trauma and healing throughout that process. So it's a glimpse into that and an overview.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's dive straight in, right?
Okay.
What does healing mean to you, Reenie?
For me, healing took place once I accepted what the trauma actually was. And once I focused on what was beyond that and realized that what has happened to me is not necessarily a definition of who I am or what I'm capable of. And I don't know that you can ever exactly say when healing's done, so to speak. I feel like it can be a lifelong thing. But for me, it came when I got answers of where I came from, and that really helped me.
Yeah. So there's a lot there, and my pen wasn't fast enough to scribble them all down, right? I only got the first bit. So
Okay.
you said accepting the trauma. I think
Yes.
you said. So can you expand a little bit on that? What you mean by that?
When I was growing up, being adopted was something that I chose to focus on as it kind of made me special. I tried to focus on that growing up. And as I got older, I realized, and once I started to understand that when your life begins with rejection, um, which adoption is this beautiful thing. It's like this wonderful solution to a problem. You end up giving a baby to a home that desperately wants it and can love it. So that's wonderful, right? That's a beautiful thing. But it started with trauma for the baby, and so when I accepted that was true, a lot of the issues that I dealt with in relationships and just a lot of the things that I struggled with made more sense. But I had to accept that that is, while that is true, I don't know. I had to accept that that was the fact, but I also had to work through what it meant to grow past that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Um, I mean, you said that you've used the accepting. You said accepting once, and you said acceptance. Um, is what you're getting at that there was a time when you were fighting against this?
Yeah, I believe so. I don't even know if I was truly aware how much I was, but yes, I was. You want so bad, especially as a child, you just want to belong, right? And you want to be um the same, or I don't know, like especially in our families, but I had to accept that there were things about that were never going to be the same for me as they were for my sister who was their biological child. And once I accepted that and understood that it wasn't really necessarily anyone's fault that was different either, I had to accept that. So there's different things that I had to accept and heal from, separately in that same kind of understanding.
Yeah. And what you talked about the biological family. Was there a moment when you realized that it wasn't rejection from your birth mother, or or not? What was how did this idea of rejection kind of, what was the effect of that idea when you reunited?
Well, for me, when I reconnected and I found my biological mother, at first it seemed like there was an acceptance and there was going to be a relationship. And that's part of my story, is that she ended up rejecting me again 2 more times. And so I relived that trauma, if you will. I actually kind of hate that word, but it makes sense and it's accurate. It just feels like it's a buzzword sometimes. But I had to
A
relive
relive
that.
word, you mean?
No, trauma.
Sure, yeah, okay.
Um, but I had to go through that as an adult twice with her, and now I don't have a relationship with her because it's very painful and it's not healthy for me. But um, yeah, I had to work through rejection again.
Yeah,
So it was one thing to think about being rejected or given up when someone hasn't had a chance to know who you are as a baby, right? Like that's one thing to accept, but it was a whole nother thing for her to meet me as an adult, get to know me a little bit, and then reject me again. That was a whole new thing to go through, and that kind of knocked me over. And it took more to heal from that than the fact that I had been given up for adoption.
wow, wow. So I was barking up completely the wrong tree with the rejection stuff, right? I was totally up the wrong tree, yeah, because we didn't really talk much about the reconnection stuff when we spoke last
Yeah.
time. So yeah, it was. I guess the rejection of us as babies is a concept, whereas rejection as an adult is real life.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's a real life thing. That's why it's tougher. Yeah,
And sometimes when people give up babies, they're in a situation where they maybe don't feel like they have a choice, or circumstances are where it's going to be better for the child to not be raised by the biological parents, correct? But when you reject someone as adults, you're both adults, that is a choice. There's no way you can say that it's not a choice anymore, right? And so then, you know I went through this process of going, wow, like I am not worthy. Your brain knows things that your heart doesn't always get. And I knew I was worthy of love because I have so many in my life who love me completely unconditionally, but my heart just really struggled with how she could cast me aside once she actually knew who I was. And I'm not gonna lie, like I've come a long ways and there's been a lot of healing. But there are still moments where that still stings when I think about that. But they're really different um types of rejection. When you reject someone that you actually have a moment to get to know who they are and what their character is, that's really different.
yeah. So what would the key points on or the realizations or the moments when that real life, in inverted commas, adult life rejection, what were the key moments in healing that part, would you say?
For me, so after meeting my biological mother, I pursued. It was a really horrible experience, actually. It it I almost not quite had a breakdown, but it really did kind of destroy me for a little bit. And so then I questioned a lot of her story about how I came to be, and I had a desire to find out the answers and what the truth was. Because I thought maybe she's acting the way that she is because it was a lie. So I pursued finding my biological father, and no intention of reaching out to him, but I did. And that process of getting answers, and when I was going through the search, I connected to a lot of really distant cousins, and the acceptance and the love from them and them trying to help me find out where I fit into their family was huge in the healing process for me. It's like I needed to feel accepted and loved from some sort of biological family. And even though they didn't even know my biological father, the fact that they welcomed me and loved me and they wanted me was huge for me. And it's interesting because, you know, I'm married and I'm a mother and my husband loves me, my husband wants me, my children love me. And sometimes I think there was a little bit of a struggle of, well, we want you, we love you, but there was something about that biological connection that I desperately was searching for acceptance in that aspect too.
Yeah.
And it's different. And unless you experience it, I don't know that you can truly understand that. And that's okay. But you know, like their acceptance and loving of me right from the get-go was huge for me. That was a big step into healing for me.
Yeah. Wow. And was there anything you're talking about that questioning stuff? Was there anything that happened in terms of questioning your own your biological mother's what's the word? I'm struggling to get the word here. Did you question anything about her? Was anything about, yes, the healing came from the relationships with the other parts of the biological family, but did you discover anything about her that helped you on that healing journey?
Um, that's a really good question. I I think I learned things about myself through who she is and who I could potentially be that I don't want to be. Um, I also I tend to always look through a lens of grace at people, and I tend to forgive and believe the best. And so my husband saw red flags with her from the very beginning, and I just did not. And he was ready to be done with her the first time she said, "I don't want anything to do with you anymore." And I really just, oh, there's a part of me that even right now today still would love to have some sort of connection with her, even after everything she did to me. But I learned about um I think a lot of what she has done is just because she's a selfish person, and so I know that I have that tendency, and so I learned that I needed to be careful that I wouldn't become like that part of her that, I don't know, that made her able to treat somebody cruelly, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I love the grace word.
Yeah.
I love. I think that's very profound when it comes to
Well,
the.
we're all complex people, right? Like we're not just simple like a couple bullet points. There's so many complexities to why we react and why we do the things that we do. And I try to look through that lens. You know, even when people hurt you, it's difficult to do, but there's something that motivated that. Like there's something in them. And you know, I don't know her whole story. Maybe there's trauma that she hasn't talked about, or maybe there's things that she struggled with. It does seem like there maybe is insecurity in a lot of ways, but it's not as simple as she's mean.
Yeah,
It's not that simple. Like there's more complexity to that. And so, you know, I need grace. And so I need forgiveness and I need people to, you know, give me the benefit of the doubt. And so I really try to do that,
yeah,
even when I think about her.
yeah. So what's coming to mind is a fellow adoptee who was on the show recently, and I'm not. I'm trying to remember who it was, and I'm just checking into my podcast listing, and I should be able to. And the reason I'm doing that is because I think it's going to help you listeners if you're struggling with any of this. And I can't remember who it was. No, it is. I got it. Yeah, it was a fellow adoptee and a counsellor called Joanne Bagshaw. So I'll put a link in the notes, guys, to that. And she talked about the fact that there's something has gone awry, should we put it, to put it politely, within the birth family that has led to the adoption.
Mm-hmm.
And that probably won't have been fixed in the meantime. So between relinquishment and reunion, it's quite likely that whatever was going on hasn't been addressed.
Wow, that's awesome, profound thought. I will probably think about that a lot, actually. That's really true.
So yeah, she's we've been on a healing journey.
Yes.
We've been on a journey of curiosity. We've been trying to find answers. We've been trying to move on.
Yes.
So we're coming from a hungry space, right? And we've been doing some work, and it may be that our biological mother has done the same, but it also may be that they haven't.
Yeah.
So
Sometimes the hardest thing about life is we want to know why. We want to know why people do what they do. We want to know why things happen to us. We want to know why tragedy happens, all those things. And that question, why, can be so actually damaging. It can prevent healing because sometimes, unfortunately, it's just the reality of life. We don't get the why. We don't get it. We don't get to know an answer of why people have done what they've done, or like, I may never know why she has been the way that she is. I may never know that. But we can't focus on the why. We have to focus on the how we're going to get past it, how we're going to use that to grow. Or, like we don't always get a why. We even ask that question, why does someone get cancer and die at 55? Like, we ask that question as humans, we want to know why. But sometimes the hardest part about life, at least for me, has been you don't always get that answer.
yeah,
And so you can't fixate on that.
and the why, it, the why questions, that's brain chatter, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
it's like the whack-a-mole, the whack-a-mole game. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
why, and then you solve one out, you solve one,
Three more pop up.
yeah, three more pop up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, why? it I talked about this on a podcast a while ago, but so I've been with my Mrs. now. We got married in 97. We got together end of 93. Sometime during 94, I had this strange question. I was driving somewhere, and I still remember exactly where I was driving. I think it was kind of a year after we got together and we were living together, and the question came up: why do I love my wife? And the only thing I could come up with in terms of a logical thing was, or the first thing came up, well, because she does what she said she's going to do, so it's quite, it's a safe place. But the why is a head thing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The reason why it's so strange, it's so difficult to come up with why do I love something, is because we're looking, it's almost like we're looking in the wrong filing cabinet. We're looking for an end to the why.
Yes. We want something to balance. We want it almost like mathematically to come out like equal, or to be solved. Like, logically, we want it to make sense. But
There's no logic to love, though.
No, there's not. And even in relationships and a lot of those things, you're not going to find it. And you can waste, like, I wasted time, I wasted energy, I wasted time that could have been growing and healing and moving past hurt or whatever, on fixating on why. I've done that. It's easy to do, but
yeah. Well,
do that.
there's another podcast I listen to a lot, and the lady who runs that, she let me try to remember who she got. It isn't adoption related. Okay. Yeah, she's called the podcast is called Changeable. It's by a lady called Amy Johnson. She's a doctor, so Dr. Amy Johnson. She will say, well, that's what brains do.
Yeah.
So we're looking for peace, aren't we? And we're thinking that the answers are going to bring us peace.
Mm-mm.
But they don't.
No, they just bring more questions sometimes.
Yeah, that's why it's whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
That's why it's whack-a-mole. The whack-a-mole game never ends, because that's what the brain's trying to do, right? If all the answers if all the answers all the questions are being answered, there's no job for the brain.
Yeah.
So and like a logic to grace, like if you, so I'm thinking, like you couldn't put logic and grace don't really go.
No, you can't. You actually have to remove your logic or your making things be practical or equal or fair, if you will. Like you got to toss that out the window. You can't. Grace is from your heart. Like there's nothing you can do. Thought process is justification, nothing. It doesn't exist together.
Well, it's the wrong department, isn't it? We're looking, it's that back to that fire cabinet. We're looking, grace comes out of the heart, questions come out of the head. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. But how incredible that the healing came from others on the biological side, because I guess you weren't expecting that, were you?
No, I wasn't. I actually wasn't expecting to connect with any biological family after my experience with my biological mother. So when I was going down the biological father side and trying to do the research to find out who he was, it was just to get the answer of who he was and to know if her story was true. That's it. That was my whole goal. I didn't want to reach out to him. I didn't think I could go through that kind of a pain again. My family was worried I would go through that again. And so it was just like, let's find out who he is. And just like, I just felt like I had to do that. And I would somehow, there would be answers. Like I would just understand maybe her better if I knew who he was and if he was awful or whatever. And so as that journey started, there were connections made to extended family. And it was so incredible. It was such a contrast through what I had gone through her that it was almost like I mistrusted it at first. But it was incredible how just feeling like accepted from without having to pass some sort of test, or I don't know. I felt like with her, I was passing a test I didn't even know I was taking. And I don't know. It was interesting that just someone wanting you to belong to their group was, or their family was so, it was really powerful for me.
Yeah. Because you
Like
mentioned
physically, I physically changed. Like there were health things that I had struggled with my whole life, and physically I was healing too, not just emotionally. It's so incredible to me. I'm still learning so much about all of that and how it's all connected, because it was so um it was crazy to me how much those things are connected to each other, and how healing emotionally or feeling accepted, or I don't know, it was incredible how that manifested physically for me also.
yeah. So I'm going to go back to that question, because it's a key one, and as we were as we were talking before we hit the record button, I said the setup for today's episode is right. Well, we bandy these words around like trauma, identity, and healing. And we don't always kind of define our terms.
Yeah.
So what does healing mean to you?
For me, healing was accepting that trauma or harm or hurt or whatever you want to call it had happened, accepting that that was true, but realizing that that's not who I am. That's not all there is to my story, and moving past that, and moving. We use the word perspective a lot, especially it seems like in this world of adoptees and being adopted, but I use it in every part of my life too. What we focus on affects everything, correct? So when you allow yourself to accept that a trauma has occurred, and then you focus on what's ahead, then you can begin to heal. And for me, what was helpful in making that happen was um, biological paternal side connection, and um, actually writing really helped me heal also.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
How did writing help you heal?
I kept a blog during the whole process, and it was like I feel like when I try to, like, just even this right here, talking to you, I'm not as good at this. Like, it's not as free as if I'm writing it. And so for me, I just had to write my feelings out. And when I would write that out, it was such a release for me. Um, and then I would share it with people, and it was helpful to them. And that was healing for me also. And so it's like I could put it, I don't know, I would call it, it's kind of gross, but I always say I just have to puke my words, and I get them out there, and I immediately feel a sense of release, and it's like I understand what I'm feeling better when I've written it out also. It's like I can't articulate it as well verbally, but when I write it out, it feels like, oh, yes, that is what I'm feeling, or yes, that is what that experience meant, or
Yeah.
that's what I learned from this.
Yeah. So I'm the flip on that. I'm better talking it out than writing it.
Yeah.
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 And the reason I'm sharing that, listeners, is because the likelihood is you're going to be in one of our camps, right?
Yeah. So
Or,
true.
or a third camp is equally at home, writing it or talking it. So, or doing it in drawing it in, like drawing
Oh yeah.
illustration and that sort of stuff. So, whatever works for you, dear listener, works for you, right? We're not trying to tell you how to do it.
Yeah.
We are, and so we're bringing a perspective. We're saying that any perspective on this is cool. So we've talked about accepting the trauma, and then some of us talk about the fact that we are denying it or suppressing it, or we weren't aware. You mentioned that we're not aware of it, and then you said something very meaningful. You said that realizing that that's not who I am. So there's a sense of what word would so the word that comes to my mind is uncoupling. So you uncoupled trauma from you. You
Yes.
disidentified, right? You say, right, okay, I am not my trauma. I don't have
Right.
to
What happened to me isn't who I am. That's just something that happened to me.
yeah,
And I didn't realize how much I had those as the same in my mind and in my heart. I
yeah,
had this, yeah, it's so interesting that I actually felt that maybe there was something wrong with me. I was unlovable, all those things. That that isn't who I am. That's just how my life started. That's just what happened to me. They're very different.
yeah, yeah. So why does it matter that we do this disidentification from our trauma? Why is it important that we uncouple?
I don't think you can truly heal until you do. I don't think you can actually grow. When you talk about thriving, so surviving, you're just existing. You're existing in spite of trauma, or, extreme pain or near death or whatever. But when you thrive and flourish, you actually grow, and you can become something else. You will be stuck if you cling to that as your identity, as this is who I am, as I'm rejected, I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy. You cannot thrive. You will not grow. I don't believe that's possible. If you cling to that, I don't think you can grow and thrive. And um yeah, I think it'll affect every aspect of your life and relationships and everything.
Yeah. So for me, I see these things very, very clearly, and actually, I think too simplistically for a lot of people.
Okay.
So there's me, and there's my trauma, and they're two separate things.
Yeah.
They're two separate things, and I see. So I'm more interested in who I am than how I feel. I'm more interested in who I am rather than what happened to me. Right. So
Yes.
we look at trauma from. I think we use the word trauma and in mainly in two senses. So it's an event, okay, the relinquishment, that, okay, trauma is an event, and then trauma as a feeling,
Okay.
and it's a feeling, and it's an extreme feeling, and that's what's triggered. Right? So the feeling is triggered. Something happens to us,
Right.
and the feeling is triggered. So trauma is either an event or a feeling, or both, but neither of those are who we are. So it kind of seems oversimplistic as I say it like that.
It does to me at first hearing. I understand what you're saying, but I also think it's important that we accept or understand that the trauma does affect you and it does affect who you become in a way, right? Just like physically, if we are humanly like scarred, like we're in an accident and we have to have surgery, and we will have that scar forever. That's not something you can just necessarily be done with because your body healed from it. You'll have a scar from it. So that part of accepting is that understanding that the trauma made our reactions be, like, say, even just trusting, like this is just one example, like trusting people, trusting people's love of you. The trauma affected how we handled that. So it's not who we are, and it can't define us, and it can't be all we focus on, but it's important to understand that it did affect us. Do you get what I mean? Like
Yeah. So how did healing how did the healing that you went through, that you enjoyed? We don't say the word enjoyed in adoptee circles, do we? Right? How did the healing that you enjoyed through these connections with these very open, I think the thing that came to mind as you were describing them, it was that they were kind of like unexpected cheerleaders.
yeah.
Right, they were,
Yes.
nobody was expecting. Everybody thought the cheerleaders were on strike, right?
Yes.
And then they came out, we were cheerleaders. So how did that healing impact your trust of other people?
It's like there had to be confirmation or proof, for lack of a better word, that I was worthy of acceptance, worthy of love. Because when I went through what I went through with my birth mom, I started to question who I was more than I ever even had before. And like, well, maybe there is something actually wrong with who I am at the core. And so when people were reminding me that that's not who I was and loving me and accepting me, I don't know, this just, it was, it confirmed what I knew deep inside, but I'd questioned because of someone's rejection. I don't know. That sounds kind of not how I mean it to come out, I guess, but um,
Yeah. So how would you? The thing that came to me from my own story was, I'd done a load of I'd done the initial start of the healing phase, and then I read the primal wound, and
mhm.
that set me back, right? And then when I realized that who we are is truly unwoundable, then that was the second part of my healing. So it kind of sounds a little bit like what you did. So
Yeah.
you done some work, you've done some healing work. Then that was set back really,
Yes.
really badly by the rejection of and it sounded like it was more than one time. The rejection of you as an adult.
Yes.
And then that was healed by this. And one of the reasons that healed was the support of these unexpected cheerleaders. So it's not a. It's a more like a game of snakes and ladders than a smooth healing curve.
Yes, it's not a smooth, straight, flat, easy road, that's for sure. But it's one that's worth going down, obviously. Anything that's worth something costs something.
Yeah. So the trust, did you, it sounds to me like it was more about trust in yourself rather than trust in others. That was the outcome from the healing, from the reconnection with the biological family.
Maybe trusting that I'm lovable.
Yeah.
That makes me sound more vulnerable than I really have lived my life,
Then you
but
felt
that's
at the
the
time, yeah.
deepest, most inner part of my heart has always felt that, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The inner part of your heart.
Yeah. It's funny because growing up and as a young adult, a lot of people did not even know I was adopted. A lot of people didn't know the things I've struggled with, because that's not who I presented. Um, and so this whole process revealed that innermost, I call it the inner child, or it's like this little vulnerable little girl in there. And it actually made me angry at times to realize that she was in there and that she had so much, like she was so vulnerable and weak. But that was part of the acceptance and healing for me also, is to accept that was in there and that was real.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Inner children are like that.
Yeah. I was like, I am a strong woman. This is ridiculous. It
Yeah.
was very frustrating to be, how can this have such a profound impact on me and how I'm reacting to things when I know that, I don't know. It was like an inner battle of feeling two things simultaneously that were completely contrary to each other. That was
You mentioned that
actually,
last time. You mentioned that last time we spoke.
mm-hmm.
So can you I mean, the first thing is that that's what inner children do.
Yeah.
The inner children have tantrums. That is the nature of the inner child.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they do. Like, that's what the
That's true. I
brain.
haven't thought about it that way, but that
Yeah,
is actually a really good description.
that's what they do. That's the job of the brain is to kind of keep us alive, and
Mm-hmm.
and part of the job, the brain gets confused because it it doesn't differentiate between physical danger and emotional danger. It sees the same the
It's
things.
just all danger.
It's all
Yeah.
danger.
Yeah. That's true.
So you've got. I haven't done this, but a few people have mentioned it to me. A few of the guests on the show, who are both people, adoptees who are therapists that work with other people and have done therapy. They talk about parts work. Have you heard this? Or internal family systems. It's called. It's basically it's understanding all the different parts of you.
Okay.
That's what I've deduced right from that conversation. So the inner child's job is to feel like that's what the inner child does. Like, is the one that has tantrums. And then the is it the amygdala, the danger part of our the danger part of our brain is there to watch out for
Protect, yeah.
attacks. So it doesn't differentiate between physical danger and emotional danger. So the danger of getting knocked over by a car, or the danger of getting left out at a party, or rejected by our birth mother again, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what the job's to be. So yeah, and the parts work is to looking at those different bits, is identifying the different parts of ourselves, and then healing those different bits. So, what other outcomes? What other outcomes did you see for yourself as part of the healing process? So we talked about trust. You trusted yourself. Self-trust was the one that came through to me. You didn't say, you didn't say, for example, well, I once I'd had the healing through the connections with the biological family, I then felt more. I then felt more comfortable with strangers, for example, because I wasn't expecting people to. I could trust. I could trust others more easily after healing. You didn't say that. What you said is, I that you got a sense of trust in yourself, and you kind of like, you trusted yourself, the inner child quietened, and the more lovable feeling Reenie came out. That's how kind of I got it.
Yeah, that's very accurate. That's there was a renewed confidence and assurance that it was okay to be open and trusting in relationships of any kind, friendships, family, whatever. And my confidence for that was back, or like stronger than ever, I guess.
Yeah.
And there will still be people who reject you in life, but understanding and trusting that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a flaw within me. I don't know, like, really how to articulate that very well, but it was like, it's not that you'll never ever ever be hurt or disappointed or rejected ever in life, but that it is not about me being unlovable or untrustworthy or anything. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. So let me take a go at it. So what you're saying is, you take rejection a lot less personally than you used to do.
Yes, yes. I mean, obviously it still stings. It doesn't happen very often. But even things like if you apply for a job and you're a finalist and they pick someone else, okay, that has nothing to do with being adopted, that's nothing to do with relationships, nothing. That my reaction to that used to be so like irrational. And now I understand that's life. That's not a reflection of me not being good enough or unworthy, or I don't, do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, it was,
Yeah,
my
I think so.
reaction used to be like a kind of a it felt ridiculous, like, reaction to that. Like, it would set me back in ways it shouldn't have. It's just literally that person was more qualified. But those kind of rejections used to set me back. And now through the process of healing, I it's my confidence in who I am. That sounds way more cocky than I mean it to be, but I I don't know. Like, it was
What
not.
word did you use? Cocky.
Yeah, I don't. I it felt like I think I'm all that. It's not that at all. It's just that they're life is going to have rejections at time, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's a reflection of you not being good enough or worthy or lovable or
Yeah.
trustworthy,
Okay. So let me take another go at that then. So it's like we've both got glasses on. We've both got
Yes.
glasses on. So you used to see the world through uh, glasses with rejection
Yes.
on them, and
Yes.
that happens less.
Yes, absolutely. The lens is different. What I look through is an acceptance of reality, and um it's almost like had to learn that not everything was about me, if that makes sense, right? Like sometimes there are just things that don't work because they're not supposed to work, and it's not because
Yeah. Well, the inner
of
child, the inner child takes it personally.
yes, everything. I took everything personal.
Personally. Yeah.
Yes, and now it's like, oh,
Yeah. Well, I had
that's
one of those this morning.
uh,
I had one of those this morning. I had a text message this morning that I took personally. And I'm like,
yeah.
what?
Yeah, I still do it too, but I think I actually pause and rethink it now. And before it was just like immediate hurt, and
Yes.
I don't know.
Well, so that's the difference between responding and reacting.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And
So
taking a minute, pause.
yeah, and also it's like it changes. So I think the inner child reacts. Okay, the inner child
Yes.
reacts, and then sometimes sometimes there's a bit of space, and the the inner child doesn't get chance to react, and sometimes like the command system says, hold on a minute, take a breath, take a beat.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And sometimes the response just comes naturally. Yeah. So sometimes we are consciously pausing to take a breath, to restrain the inner child, to question the inner child, and then as we get more fluid, then there's no pauses. It's just it's a non-event.
Yeah. I'm I, there's definitely been a lot of growth there, but I wouldn't say I've nailed that all the way. I still have moments where I'm like, oh, child
Yeah.
one
Well, that's the
again.
lifelong.
Yeah.
That's the lifelong stuff.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah. So something I've seen. You mentioned the lifelong
Hmm.
stuff. Like is it lifelong? Is it a lifelong journey? Yeah, kind of yes or no. So, I think we, as society, we think either once and done or forever. Yeah, once and done. So people say, right, if my if I break my hand and it's only a minor break, then once it's fixed, once it's healed, and that's it.
Yeah.
It's never, and then the other way is saying, right, I've broken my hand, but I broke it in a bad way, so it's never going to be healed. It's always going to be weak. Yeah, so it's either once and done or forever weak.
Huh.
Yeah, and I think that's when it comes to a physical healing. I think with emotional healing or identity healing, it's seeing who we are in that deep heart space that you talked about, seeing who we are for the first time, right? And then forgetting, and then remembering, and then forgetting, and then remembering, and then forgetting, and then
It's
remembering.
a cycle over and over again. Yes.
So that's the cycle.
Yes.
That's the cycle. So it's two very different things. So once the journey to self, how would I put this? We can never unsee what we've seen,
Right.
but we can forget it.
Okay.
So another way of saying this is once the journey to consciousness has happened, the journey in consciousness begins. The journey, people say, like I heard this from a religious one, once the journey to God has happened, the journey in God begins.
That's true. Yeah. Yes.
It's different to once and done and forever. There's an initial seeing, and then after that, it's just remembering and forgetting all the time. So that's the lifelong part.
Yeah. It's gonna be something that you have to I don't think it's ever just a point that I will ever be in life where everything is totally healed and I never ever have to ever deal with anything creeping up or whatever ever again. But I do know that my reaction to those things when they do boil up within me is different as I'm progressing through life. Right? Like we talked about the inner child reacting and taking everything personal, like that gets less as I go through the journey of growing and thriving. And so I don't know. I mean, maybe it'll all eventually go away, but I just don't know that I believe that.
I don't think it. I think it's a lifelong journey, but it
Yeah.
has two parts. You've got the first chapter, and then you've got infinite chapters after that.
Yeah. I think I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and healing to me is being less bothered by the reactions.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So as you go forward, the reaction or it's like if you pick off a scab, it heals quicker again. And then you pick it off again and it's going to heal quicker than it did the last time. And, like I see it like kind of like that.
Yeah. And we keep on going into the thing about this stuff is we need metaphors to describe it.
Yeah.
And sometimes metaphors, but it isn't the metaphor. Life isn't healing, isn't emotional healing isn't the same as healing.
That's true. Yeah.
Right. So
Just like the emotional trauma or experience isn't the same as like a physical either, but it's like the only way we know how to somehow articulate it a little bit or make it make sense. It doesn't always make sense actually, but
so I haven't been anywhere. We've been doing this a little bit in the last few episodes. Was there a point in your life that you would describe as you coming out of the fog?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was.
It was during the, finding out who my biological father was, pursuing that whole avenue, that relationship. It's like the confidence in who I was started to affect hmm, every part of my day-to-day reacting, um, the way I viewed the past, also the way I looked at the birth mom experience. It was like you say, it was like starting a different, almost like a different road. That doesn't even really maybe make sense, but kind of. It's like I left that one and started a new one, and clung and focused on the hope and the um what there was to be positive about, or I don't even know how to see. I'm better at writing than talking.
So
I'm
that's probably a good place to bring it in. To remind the listeners that every episode of the podcast that I do has some show notes, and in those show notes you can check out the guests' socials. You can check out the guests' website if they've got one, and Reenie has, because she's got this blog, so you can link to the blog and find out more, because that's where you, as you said, this is where it comes after you've, what did you say? Puked your words. After you've
yeah.
puked your words and edited them, that's a more natural space for you to.
I actually don't even edit. So with my
Oh
blog,
wow!
sometimes I would at night, I can't go to sleep. I got to write whatever this was in my head. And I would sit down, and it would be maybe 10 minutes max that it would take me to just type it all out. And then it was good. And I don't, in fact, sometimes I've gone back and read, and it's like, oh wow, there's actually a spelling error in there or something like that. But I just don't, it's just raw, it's real, and it's out there. And then I do that with anything that comes across my heart or mind, that feels like I have to get it out. And so, yeah.
Is there anything else that I've not asked you about that you'd like to mention?
I can't think of anything. I do. One thing that's important, I guess, to me is I never want it to ever come across that I'm living this life of self-pity, or um feeling sorry for myself or whatever. I truly believe everything happens for a reason, and this is just a part of my story, is being adopted and rejected and all of those things, but it's not like that's how I live everyday life, is focusing on that. um but it does help have empathy to others who have been in that situation, and um it is also real enough that you don't want to not acknowledge it too, I guess that I can't think of anything like specific that I
Yeah.
should share, but
Cool. Thank you, Reenie. Thank you, listeners, and we'll speak to you again very soon. Take care.